Hey everyone, it's Jenny. Welcome back to my channel. We are back with another DIY. I hope that you guys are excited. So today's video, we're actually going to create a giant poof pillow, the one that you put on the floor. I've made something like this on my channel before, but like in that video, like someone commented, you didn't even show us how to do it. And it's true. I think I was just trying to figure it out. That's why I'm trying to recreate it. And it's perfect because my husband's niece has a birthday this week, and actually the day that I'm filming this is actually her birthday party. I'm so excited to see what's gonna look like in her bedroom because her bedroom's kind of like girly. She's 11, so the room is kind of like super bright colored, purple, pink, and blue. And the yarn that I have is actually cream and purple, so it's definitely working for her aesthetic rather than mine. So I'm really excited to show you what it looks like in her room and everything. And there's a few more things that I bought for her room decor, so I'm excited to see her face after everything's done. So I hope you're surprised. Allison, if you're watching, this is all for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Woo! So for this DIY, I actually used 5 yarn rolls, but it wasn't enough. So I definitely suggest if you plan to make a giant puff pillow to grab a little bit more than that, maybe like 8 just in case. So go ahead and take one of your yarn rolls and unravel it to where the end is and make a knot. Definitely make sure that you leave a good amount of a tail at the ends because you're going to use it later on. So this is where it's an optional choice. If you want your yarn to be a little bit closer, then make the loop smaller. But if you want it to be bigger holes all around the poof, then make your loop bigger. But you just want to make sure that you have the same amount of loops all around when you're doing this project. So now you're going to make a loop out of the working yarn that you have and then tucking that into the loop previous to it. Does that make sense? I hope so. So here is where I overestimated this giant poof. I did about 50 of these loops to begin with, but it's totally up to you how big you want your poof to be. Again, I did 50, but I think I overestimated because I didn't have enough yarn. I also wanted to mention that you definitely want to keep track of how many loops that you do have because you want to end up with the same amount of loops when you're finished. Trust me, I had to count back so many times just to make sure that I'm not losing track. Now that you're done with the ends, you're going to go ahead and grab the other end where you initially first started and tuck that through, in my case, the 50th loop. So this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. I did make my loops a little bit too small. So when I'm trying to make loops out of the working yarn and tucking that into the previous row's loops, I know, a little bit confusing, but just watch the video and I'll show you. It was kind of hard to tuck in, so it's okay, we made it work. Just remember, you started off with 50 loops. You want to end up with 50 new loops on the second row.
Every day is gonna play out the same. I love you better today than yesterday. It's gonna play out the same. It's gonna play out the same.
So this is where I got a little bit surprised. I only did about 3.5 rows until I started running out of yarn, and this is where I'm just tying more yarn onto it. It's okay if the knot looks all messy because you can just tuck it in later, so don't worry about it. It's going to look seamless at the ends. But yeah, quite surprised. My last DIY making a poof pillow, I got a good amount of rows out of the first yarn. So like the other rows, you're going to use your new working yarn and looping that through the previous row's loops. I forgot to mention that the smaller the loops that you make, the easier it'll start coming apart if you pull too hard while making a new loop. Just make sure that they're still intact and you didn't pull out the other loops, but it's okay if you do because it's easy to just tuck it back in. If you plan on making something like this, I suggest putting on some TV or something to watch because it is going to take you a bit of time. While I was doing this, I watched about 5 episodes of Lost.
Hands in his hair already saying that you forgot about me. I just don't wanna know who you give your loving to. You'll end up leaving here with someone.
Wowzas, it finally was coming together, and I definitely was getting a little bit worried because we were running out of yarn. I probably had 1.5 yarn left, so I tried to make it work by stretching it out a little bit so I have room to put in my stuffing afterwards. But yeah, definitely suggest getting more yarn just in case, because you can always return them. But this was at 3:30 in the morning and there was no stores open during that time for me to go get more yarn. But it's totally fine. Again, we made it work and that's all that matters. So what I did was my last yarn, I actually split it into half because I needed it for, you know, the beginning as well as the end. So I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can, so just bear with me. So what you're going to do at the end, instead of making loop within loop, you're going to take the working yarn and pulling it through all of the loops on the last row. By doing that, you're slowly closing up the gap. So make sure that you're pulling tightly, but not too tight.
About me, I just don't wanna know who you give your loving to.
So because this yarn was really soft, I pulled too hard and I broke off my yarn piece. So just be careful, don't pull too hard if you're using the same yarn as I am. So like I said, I was running out of yarn, so I was just trying my best to just close up this gap so then it doesn't have such a big hole at the ends, but it ended up having a hole anyways because I was running out. But it's fine. When you run out of yarn, what you're going to do is just take the ends and tie it to one of the loops and voila, you are done with one side. So now I'm just taking it and starting to stretch it out as much as I can and then working on the other side by putting in the stuffing.
I just don't wanna know.
For this giant poof, I got these pillows from IKEA. I thought they were going to work well with this cushion because it has feather in them and it felt really good. So I bought myself 3 of these and actually turned out that it wasn't the best for these type of cushions for the floor. If you want something like that, then you definitely want to find a stuffing that's a little bit more firm. Of course, because it was all rolled up, there was no air into it, so that's why I'm fluffing it up by just scrunching it together, just patting it. Of course, you want it to be nice and fluffy for this cushion.
Each of us both done in a crown. A crown, a crown, a crown. A king and a queen royally bound. Yeah. Both called.
So same thing that I did on the other side, you're just gonna try to make the hole as small as possible. So I had a little bit more yarn than I thought it would be, so I felt like, hey, I can make another row of loops before I start closing up the gap.
Fuss and the fights will keep and trust. And you make me wanna say, I love you better today than yesterday. Every day is gonna play out the same, the same, the same, the same. Hey, I love you better today than yesterday. Every day is gonna play out the same.
I just don't wanna know who you give your loving to. You'll end up leaving here with someone. I just don't wanna know you be drinking way past 2, lights out and it's not me you're loving. I just don't wanna know
Alright guys, what did you guys think of the DIY? I hope that you guys liked it. It's super cute. I love how it looks like in her room and everything with all the colors, and it works super well. So this yarn actually is different than the one that I used in my other video. This one's definitely a lot softer and it breaks so easy, so you just gotta be careful if you do plan to use this type of yarn. For my last poof pillow, I only used 3 of the yarn rolls, but this one I used 5 and it was still not enough because I think it was a little smaller and maybe I kind of like pushed it a little bit too much and wanted to make such a big pillow, so I overestimated, but it's okay. It turned out really cute and I hope that you guys liked it as well. If you have any questions, leave it down below. I would love to see your comments and your questions. And also, if you guys don't have my Instagram, go ahead and, you know, add me on Instagram, because if you don't see me on here, you'll definitely see me on there. I really hope that you guys liked this video. If you guys did, make sure to thumbs it up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Binge on my other videos. Click that button up there and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!